Hello everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Hue at Home. Did you know that February 1st through to the 7th is Eating Disorders Awareness Week right here in Canada? And it is time to have the conversation to dispel the myths and the misconceptions too as well about eating disorders, because it affects all people, no matter who you are or where you're from. We are going to have an in-depth conversation with an amazing panel from across the country and outside. So let's get to it. Let's bring in our panel. Welcome, ladies, to this. I think it's going to be an educational and a very good way to provide some information so all of us can be involved and help. So from Toronto, I am going to welcome Kim Duffy. She is the co-founder and board chair of the Waterstone Foundation for Eating Disorders. Welcome, Kim. Give a wave if you can and say
Thank
hi.
you, Tracy.
And
Thank you, Tracy.
oh, no problem. And we have Susan Osher, also from Toronto. She's a certified eating disorders specialist, supervisor, and she also has her own business, Connected Eating, Nourished from Within. Welcome, Susan. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Tracy. Great to be here.
And also from Toronto, we have Gabby Ash. She is an early childhood educator, and she is an incredible content creator on Instagram. You can follow her at Daily Wellness with Gabby. Welcome, Gabby.
Hi, so nice to be here.
And we go to Mexico, to Nuevo Vallarta. And welcome once again, my dear friend, Charlotte Armstrong, co-founder of the All In Peer Support, or All In Family Peer Support. And then we come back here to Hue Studios in Winnipeg, and live it is the lovely Kirsten Drybow, who is also another co-founder of the All In Family Peer Support. And Kirsten, well, we're going to have a great chat, I think.
Absolutely. It's good to be here, Tracy.
Yes, and it's great to have you back in studio. So I want to thank all of our guests for joining. Kim, I'm going to start with you. We had the conversation, and it was, for me, very eye-opening. Number one, about your foundation, Waterstone Foundation, but also your lived experience too. And I'm going to start with the round table and begin with you, Kim, on your experience and what also led to the beginnings of Waterstone.
Thank you, Tracy. It's great to see everybody, and thank you for doing this. My experience began with my eldest daughter when she was 15 years of age, back in 2008. And we received a call from her. My husband and I were away on a business trip, and she called us to tell us that she had something that she needed to talk to us as soon as we got home. And to be honest, my first thought was like, she's 15, what's going on? Didn't quite know. And she told us that she was struggling with an eating disorder when she came home. And that was the beginning of our journey 16 years ago. And we tried to access treatment at that time. And we had an 8-month wait to get her into treatment at one of the local hospitals. And unfortunately, not a whole lot has changed with the system. So, thus, in 2014, I wanted to raise awareness about eating disorders and create an opportunity for individuals to be able to access treatment, whether it be in the hospital, whether it be private. I just felt that access to treatment, because accessing treatment fast is the best and provides the best outcomes. So that was one of the reasons why I started the foundation it'll be 10 years now. So.
Wow, it's just so amazing. We're going to talk more to Kim about your journey, but just to move on, Susan, you are a certified eating disorder specialist. So first of all, I guess, an explanation on that, and then furthermore, talk about the work that you're doing to help.
Sorry. Thank you, Tracy. The certification is given by IADEP, the International Association of Eating Disorders Professionals, which is a very rigorous certification involving a certain amount of supervision hours by one of their supervisors, extensive coursework. You have to go to their conference every few years. Like, it's ongoing training, and you have to really be an expert to get that certification. So I feel very proud to be part of this organization, because it's a specialized field to work with people who have mental illness, a maladaptive coping strategy, but it has, in many, many cases, very dangerous physical consequences. And so that sort of balance of dealing with this being just maybe a symptom in some way, or a coping strategy, but not overlooking the real physical safety issue, and finding that balance. So I've worked in very severe treatment centers, or centers with very severe medical issues. I've worked at sick kids on a general inpatient, outpatient, and also there's symptom interruption. And then I, many years ago, opened Connected Eating, which offers individual, group, intensive outpatient programs, supervision, and trainings. And we have students from University of Toronto, graduate students in different fields, really to try and create a level of expertise and of both for clinicians, as well as trying to meet the need. As Kim mentioned, it's hard to access care. And in the hospital systems, while they save lives often, it's not individualized, because programs can never really be individualized. And so it's a tough balance, and I'm not bashing the hospitals at all, but at the same time, it's not one size fits all in terms of treatment. So all hands on deck. We all have to be there and be within, very competent, and be able to provide services for this very, very prolific and profound mental illness.
Oh, yes, and we're going to get more into, Susan, the clinical side of things. But first of all, I'm going to go to Gabby now. Gabby, you bring, I guess, your own lived experience and a success story, whatever. I mean, you're an early childhood educator now. What is that like? But I guess for all of us here, if you could share your story and how the road to recovery is brought you where you are today.
So my journey began back in 2015. I was going through a lot of different transitions in my life, school, family, and I essentially felt like I had lost all control within my life. And that was kind of how my eating disorder manifested. Unfortunately, it happened very, very quickly. Within a matter of months, I spent many, many years in and out of treatment. However, like Susan and Kim were saying, it didn't really get to the root of the problem. And so I spent about 5 or 6 years in and out of treatment, kind of just leaving where I went, was started off at the beginning. And so I luckily found a program where I could recover at my house, independently, without kind of having to be in those restricted, confined spaces. And I found that that really, really, really helped me in my journey. I've now been recovered for about a year and a half. I work as an early childhood educator. Recovering from my eating disorder really allowed me to get that back, and that was something I really craved and wanted. So now I do that, but also my health and wellness journey as well has really kind of helped me be able to recover and really see health and wellness through a holistic lens, as well.
Gabby, I just want to ask a question, because through what you just said, empowerment and getting back your confidence, did that help you to in becoming who you are today in the road of recovery?
Absolutely. I had lost all sense of confidence, and that was something I really wanted. I remember going to therapy, and all I said was, I want my confidence back. I just want to be happy. And so over the past couple of years, that's been really something I've been working on, doing things for myself, self-care. But yeah, definitely confidence has grown, and that has definitely helped me in my recovery journey.
Oh, well, we're definitely, I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm sure Kirsten and Charlotte and Susan and Kim will have questions too as well. But okay, Charlotte, you're up next. Explain, I guess, a little bit, first of all, on All In Family Peer Support, how that came to be, and your own lived experience, because I want to say that mental health is really tied in to eating disorders too as well, as we'll find out as we go along in the conversation. Charlotte?
Thank you for having us, Tracy. You know, Kirsten and I always love hanging out with you, and this topic is near and dear to both Kirsten's and my heart. A bit about All In. All In is an organization. It's a peer support organization for families that Kirsten and I co-founded, and it's all about supports for the family who are supporting someone who may be struggling with their mental health and or addiction. And to Kirsten and I, family is whatever family is to you. So it can be the traditional family or, you know, your best friend, coworker, whatever it looks like. And we're all about supports for the family and their mental health as they're supporting somebody. And I just, this topic of eating disorders, so a little bit about me. My oldest daughter, who I call my tester child, struggled with her mental health, and that was through middle school and high school, and the impact it had on every member of our family was incredible, because we all bring our mental health story to the collective family. When my daughter was really, really struggling, I had the most incredible upset stomach. I couldn't eat anything, and it was really impacting my mental health. And so my friends would always say to me I was super skinny, life was really hard. And when I was a little bit chubby, life was a little easier. And the reason I bring that up is we need to work on our mental health, us as family members, so we can have a better shot at supporting the child, the partner, whoever. And it wasn't until I started to get a really good, strong hold on my own mental health and taking care of my mental wellness, I had a better chance of supporting her. And so that's what we do at All In. So it's all about you, the caregiver, the parent, the grandparent, whoever, and we work on supporting you to find those supports that you need. And with that, I think I'll turn it to Kirsten, because she's got the lived experience on the eating disorder side.
Oh, yes. So, Kirsten, you can share your story.
My story a little bit. And thanks, Charlotte. So I'm the co-founder, as Charlotte said, of All In Family. And yeah, just like Charlotte said, we're all about supports for the family, the caregiver, their supporter. And that was something that was missing in my own family story. Going back in time, my youngest is my daughter who struggled with an eating disorder. And that showed up in a way of restriction for her, and she was diagnosed when she was barely 14 with anorexia. We were not prepared for what was going to come down the pipe for our entire family during those years. And not only were we not prepared, we lacked resources to support ourselves, because we were her first line of support, especially around her anorexia. Mm-hmm. And we weren't doing so good. You know, it really, the chronic stress, mm-hmm. It really took its toll on our entire family and very much on myself. Mm-hmm. You know, my daughter's eating disorder, for her, it showed up several times throughout the next 10 years, once she was 13. You know, a little different maybe to some people's story, but more common than what I have seen, and I see this quite a bit. Her eating disorder showed up as a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. So, you know, she was struggling with her mental health and a way of, like Gabby said, of control and, she started restricting her eating to the point that she ended up in the eating disorder program here in Winnipeg for a couple of years. And, you know, she would make, it would be ebbs and flows, gains, and then fall back. But she never fully got a handle on it until we really discovered what was fueling the eating disorder, and that was a mental health diagnosis. But, you know, our family has been through a lot, and certainly my daughter has been through a lot. But I have to be honest, those years of her restriction and, you know, struggling with anorexia was the scariest of all of her coping strategies for my husband and I. We really felt like our control and our inability to impact her restriction was really, it was awful. Yeah.
So, Kim, I'm going to talk to you and Kirsten because your stories are similar. So was it, I can't, was it a sense of almost being out of control? Like,
For my daughter?
For your daughter?
She would say that. She would say being able to control something in her life. Yeah, she would definitely say that. She liked the feeling of being hungry. She liked the feeling of the pain of being hungry. And she liked being able to control that aspect of her life when she was feeling very out of control.
Right,
Yeah.
because that's one thing that she could
Yep.
be in control of. Kim, can you add to that with your experience?
Yep. With my daughter, the sense, I totally agree, Kristen, that being out of control. But it was interesting as she was also an athlete. And the one thing that she became known as at high school was the girl with the eating disorder. And that actually, to her, it wasn't a bad thing, which didn't make sense to me. It was something that I have an eating disorder, and that was really difficult. And to say, to also back to Charlotte and Kristen, how it affects the entire family, the siblings. And I would even say to this day, they remember those years that our focus was all on, and they understand exactly what we had to go through. But there's so much disruption in the entire family that we all needed therapy, to be honest. So, you know, to what Charlotte and Kristen are doing is so important. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, and that's interesting. So, to both of you, because you both have other daughters, how did that relationship change?
Well, yeah, you know, it was difficult on the entire family. As we moved through those years, I think it wasn't until we got into a little better space that I realized how difficult it was on my other daughter. And our house was very consumed around the health of the daughter that was struggling. So it, you know, having said that, I do like to also share that what we went through as a family, in my family story, each one of us, including both my daughters, would not be the people that they are today without the depths of where we've been. So, you know, there are pieces that have shaped who we are, especially my daughter as she was growing up. The level of empathy, you know, just how you see the world, how you see people.
Right.
You know, the depth of emotion and love and gratitude. So, yes, I'm going to say absolutely our entire family was incredibly affected, and my daughter definitely has some trauma. My daughter that watched what was unraveling, that she had to work through, and she continues to work through. And I think she's a pretty exceptional young woman, and I think she's got some really deep pockets within her character, and I think it's because of what we saw.
Yeah.
I don't know how the other ladies feel about that. I hope I'm making sense, but yeah.
Kim, do you want to just
Yeah,
follow
I'll
up
jump
on
in
that?
real quick and let the others
Yeah.
talk as well. It's interesting to see the family now. During that time, yeah, it was really hard on everybody, but now it's been over 10 years, the closeness, the understanding, because we all learned more. We all learned about it. We all went through it together. And during it, how difficult it was, not only for, Corinne, but the family, and just the closeness now, the understanding. As Kristen said, the empathy, other people, non-judgmental in any way. And just, yeah, we have a very healthy and happy family now that, I guess, going through something bad has turned into something really good. It's turned out well.
Well, that's so good. Susan, I'm going to go to you. She's got a smile on her face. It was interesting go back to what Kim said about her daughter being labeled. Oh, the girl with the eating disorder. Labels now, and types of eating disorders. Because you can't really look at someone and say, oh, they have an eating disorder, can you? But what are some of the signs? What are some of the ways that outsiders, people like ourselves, can help understand first the issue, but number two, be empathetic or being able to have a conversation with someone with an eating disorder?
So it's such a big question. I'm going to zoom out. Just
You've got the next half hour.
Sure, I'll watch. How long do I have? First of all, in the last diagnostic manual, it was actually changed from the category of eating disorders to feeding and eating disorders. Cute acronym of FED, right? And why that's significant is we have recognition of newer feeding issues. Feeding or eating disorder is an inability to feed yourself, which is obviously a very essential life skill to do. So what that broadened it to is one of the biggest feeding and eating disorders, which is ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which affects people of all ages. And it's an extreme picky eating, which affects primarily either nutritional or social functioning on a very profound level. So when we're saying, how do you recognize it? I think when we look at the history of eating disorders, it was recognized as anorexia nervosa, what we think of as anorexia nervosa. And even in my clinical world, I can honestly say that I only recognize the sort of media portrayal of someone with anorexia nervosa in very few people. And I work in this field. The skeletal look that everyone thinks of is not most people. And in fact, what's a very big topic is atypical anorexia, which is that someone loses a significant amount of weight, but is still at a normal weight. Without standing on a soapbox, I've got a real problem with the fact that we define so much feeding and eating disorders by numbers, because it makes people feel worse. Like we need it for the very emaciated, low weight, etc. But vast majority of people struggling, meaning that it impacts their mental health besides physical, are not underweight. People with bulimia or binge eating disorder are usually normal to overweight if we're using these categories. And as I just said, a lot of people with anorexia are also at a normal weight. So it's not what you might see always. We're looking for oftentimes changes, the inability to eat in a social way. If you notice that people are eating more secretively or are sort of making excuses, I'm just going to, Gabby is nodding her head. I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, include Gabby in this conversation because, what do you think, Gabby? Please add, because I don't have to sit here as the clinician alone. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was definitely gonna say that one. That was definitely one for me. It was like I used to eat every day with my group of friends, and I just started to be like, oh, well, I have to go for I'm gonna go for a walk, or oh, I'm just gonna go have my lunch somewhere else. Um, a big one is just stopping hanging out with your friends. A large part of that is because you feel like you don't deserve it. You feel that you deserve to be alone with your thoughts. Um, Pulling away from family is another big one. Um, and also just changes in mood as well, I would say, are another big one personally.
So thank you, Gabby. And what I just was just going to add to that, I mean, it's that disconnection, which is actually, or I would say, the definition of full recovery. It's that you're connected to yourself, you're connected to other people, you're able to have deep relationships. And so that the piece of, as Gabby said, this sort of much more brittle, rigid mood and edginess and avoidance, like avoidance of wanting to be with people, conversations. And so some of them are very behavioral cues, avoiding, maybe even wearing baggy clothes for some people, avoiding being seen, and others are medical, that people are having regular check-ins also with doctors. Hopefully they're sensitive to eating disorders and knowledgeable. But you see physical changes as well. You see beginning of malnutrition, fatigue, sleep abnormalities, and those are some of the signs and symptoms. Kim?
Well,
Yeah, one thing I was sorry, to Gabby and Susan on the isolation. One thing that we had no clue, well, we did know that our daughter was going in for extra help at lunchtime, and always going in. The teacher thought, oh, I've got an eager student coming in for extra help, but that was a way of avoiding going into the cafeteria and having lunch. And that then segues into the importance of the education of eating disorders, that teachers, everyone's aware of what is actually, going on.
well, that's so important. Well, then, Kim, while I've got you, then let's talk about what Waterstone right now, especially with some universities and colleges in Toronto, are doing.
Yes, thank you. So Waterstone Foundation, we launched in 2022. It's a student support program, and our timing for launching it then was basically just, we're in the height of the pandemic, and eating disorders were really skyrocketing. And for individuals going off to university and college, can be a huge transition period and can be very difficult for some. And we saw that we reached out to every single college and university in Ontario to find out what was being provided on campus in their mental health and counseling centers for students that may have an eating disorder. Were they providing anything? And we had a number of schools that said, we don't have a problem here, which was, yes, you do. You just don't want to acknowledge it. But we ended up partnering with 4 schools, and they have placed an expert eating disorder counselor on campus that students can access free of charge. And so TMU, George Brown, Carleton, and Durham have a full-time eating disorder therapist that then is also providing education to the resident dons, healthcare people on campus to understand and recognize eating disorders. The ultimate goal is to keep students to early identification and to keep them out of the hospital. and get them on their way to recovery.
And Kim, do you have any numbers or anything about how
Yeah.
the program is doing? Okay, share that.
So right now, we're close to 3,000 counseling hours have been provided since we started. Each month we get updates from the counselors and therapists to how many students they are seeing. We have 100% retention of all the therapists since we've started the program, which is huge. And the average number of counseling sessions that a student will go in is 7. So, and they can go for more. But no, it's a huge success, and we would love to see this on all campuses, or to have somebody, because a lot of times students they may, come from a long way. Home is not close by. They don't know what to do. They need to talk to somebody, and it's free of charge. So I think it's a fabulous program, and I'd honestly, I think the schools, we're into our second year with TMU and George Brown, where we renewed our contracts with them, but we'd like to see this, as I said, further schools.
Oh, amazing. Well, we got to get that here. Okay, so Charlotte and Kirsten, yeah, like a program like this, now, what can we do on the flip side for the families? And even like Kirsten, knowing that your daughter could have had it service something like this back then, would have made your journey a little different.
Yeah, there was my daughter at, she was 14, just 14. We were in the adolescent eating disorder unit at HSC in an outpatient program. And there actually were some resources, quite a few resources for parents. So that was in the adolescent program. The thing and I'm not saying that all of the resources I agreed with. I wish there was a little more empowerment focused on the individual and a little less control on the parent. That's my own personal opinion, for sure. Maybe not for every story, but for my story. But what happens when they turn 18 is it's a hard cut. And then you're off to the adult eating disorder services. And here in Manitoba, that doesn't include family resources. So, I mean, that's where I think there's a whole lot of opportunity to have family services and services for parents, but not only around the eating disorders, but around the mental health completely, right? I don't know, Charlotte, I'm going to get you to weigh in here.
I'm all about peer support and family peer support. And when Kim, you were sharing what you're doing in the universities, I'm like, can we have a group for the parents as well? Because, we're struggling too. And so that's a dream of, Kirsten's and mine, that there is more access for families. And often it might start as an eating disorder. It might be something else. But if we can support the families to have some tools to support themselves through those hard days, and that part around resilience, like sometimes we get it wrong as parents. We're so big on trying to fix, save, and solve our child that we forget sometimes to embrace that they've got the tools inside of them, and they've got what they need. If we can support them on that journey, and it's that kind of conversation that we have with parents. And I know, Gabby, when we were talking the other day too, if just hearing a bits about your story and hearing my daughter share with me now, parts that I got wrong. And she always would say, you just didn't believe me that I could figure out what I needed for myself. And she talked about how often I was listening to respond to what she was saying. Like I wasn't listening to hear what she was saying. I was already just working on what I was going to say in return. And it wasn't until I started to really hear how she defined recovery, what she needed for herself to get through those hard times, that we saw a big change in her mental health story. So again, I'm big on the family peer support, Tracy.
Of course, and family is definitely important. So Gabby, after hearing all of these stories and all the work that's actually being done. I want to, have the conversation. Susan, I think you're probably going to jump in because I want to ask about connected eating and how that was a big paving stone for Gabby. But Gabby, for yourself now, parent relationship, what was it like for you? And in hindsight now, what could have been done, or what could have been done to make it maybe better for you?
Yeah, so I do want to say I definitely agree with Kirsten. I was around the same age, actually. I was 15 when I went into adolescent treatment, and it was exactly as you described. The control was completely taken out of your hands, given to your parents, yet they didn't have much support either. Um, and that adolescent program really, really hindered my mom's and I relationship. And a little bit of a background, I am adopted by a single mother. So we've always had a really, really close relationship. I always went to her, I always told her stuff. But this program really, really affected it. I began no longer going to her for anything. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I could go to her with my problems, and that was largely because the control was all out of my hands. Anything that I essentially told her was going to go back to the program, and that was just kind of the nature of it. So that really affected my relationship, the adolescent program, um, not just with her but also with my sister, my whole family. And so while I was going in and out of treatment, it was a big adjustment to her as well, because like I said, she had had all of that control, but it was then taken away because I was 15. So I shortly after went into the adult program, the adult system. So it was a whole readjustment for both of us because, like Kristen said, the adult program is so much different. They actually don't want your parent support. They say, like, this has to be from you. Um, like, yes, of course, you can go to them for support, but like, we're not going to do therapy with them. We're not going to educate them. Like, this is solely on you. And that puts a lot of stress on somebody who's just come from the adolescent program. And so for many, many years, we didn't have a great relationship. And so it wasn't until I discovered connected eating, um, and realized that like this was something that I thought would really, really help me, given I'd been in treatment programs in and out, nothing was working. And I could do this on my own. And I think that's really also what I needed for my recovery, was to understand how to gain independence on how to feed myself, how to cook for myself, how to take care of myself, because that was all taken away when I was in programs, even as an adult. Um, and so through that program, as I started to get better, my relationship with my mom started to improve. I started to feel more comfortable going to her with my issues. And over the past year and a half, as I said, we've just really, really worked on our relationship. I go spend a lot of weekends with her, and we have a really close relationship now. That obviously took a lot of work, a lot of years. It wasn't a quick fix, um, but definitely something I'm happy that we have back. But yeah, Susan's program definitely helped me, and it was through Waterstone that I was actually able to do that program. So I'm always forever grateful and thankful for the program.
Well, I'm going to come back to you, Gabby, because you're going to be, I think, a voice of the future for all of this. But Susan, I want to go to you now. Explain a little bit more about connected eating and why it's a passion for you.
Thank you. But I have to say, Gabby, before, I think that you were ready. Like you had gone, it was all those stepping stones to go to know that you were ready to leave your eating disorder behind. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit because, and it was a battle. I'm not going to lie. It was a battle within the program as well. But I think it's tough, and I have to say, like, without bashing family-based therapy as sort of being the gold standard that's used in a lot of the eating disorders programs across North America. We know that parents need to be involved, caregivers need to be involved, but as you are all saying, oftentimes caregivers aren't given enough support and education and real skills to best help their loved ones. And I mean, this is a real issue for me. Yes, there are periods and there are ages that people struggling with eating disorders really are 99% their eating disorder. But a lot of the time, people have two sides of themselves. The part that actually is the organism that wants to live, that's got different values, who sees what they're missing, or wants that empowerment to get to that stage, and the part that's really, really afraid and somehow even protecting, thinking that it's protecting the organism. And what happens in a lot of the treatments with the young people is that, and as Gabby's saying, in some of the hospital programs as well, you're seen as an eating disorder. So you actually don't have choices, you don't have a voice, and that's a really destructive framework. You know, so like, I teach trauma-informed care, which is about collaboration, choice, trustworthiness from the clinician, but really empowering someone within a very safe structure. So I think that, the parents are the people. I often say to clients, like, your parents are the ones, as much as we care about you as clinicians, your parents are the ones that actually love and adore you the most. So we have to work with parents to get their children back and to feel like, I'm so happy to hear, because by the way, Gabby's mom's a social worker. She was so committed to Gabby. She was so there on every level. She wanted to help with, like, trying to keep good boundaries, and because she was an adult, but this is a highly sophisticated woman we're talking about here, and it's a very hard thing, an eating disorder, and helping your child with an eating disorder. So it's complicated, and there needs to be a much bigger space to individualize and help those struggling, and the families or caregivers to really bring up the person in a much more comprehensive way. And last thing I want to also just say, just in terms of the clinician, like what's happening from that view, it's interesting because there, in many latest research, they're beginning to challenge the concept of having adult and children programs, and rather have them across the lifespan, so that you don't have this sort of artificial, okay, you're 18, boom, boom, you're in the adult program now. And some 16-year-olds maybe are ready to be in an 18, not really, but in an adult program, and some 20-year-olds who are living at home. Like, there might be a much more of a need for parent involvement, and of course it's a different view, but you can't just say you're 18, you're an adult, you're out, because you also get developmental delays or hindering that happens because of the eating disorder. So it's it's a problem.
Yeah. Well, Kristen was clapping when you said that. But quickly, Susan, can you explain Connected Eating, the program, and how it works?
So we're a community-based, a private center. I'm a dietitian and a therapist, a psychotherapist. But it really is about helping people reconnect to their bodies in a stage appropriate and family-based, or whatever their system is, wherever they are in their recovery. So that's a very wordy way of putting it, but we really do aim to cater to where people are at. And what that means is that some people will have individual counseling, maybe just with a therapist, with a dietitian, and they might have a therapist outside of connected eating. We work very multidisciplinary with every center or clinician. And then we try to provide higher levels of care as much as we can. So, the IOP, the intensive outpatient program, we have for adults, which is a virtual program. And we also have one for teens and the parents. And that one is primarily for parents, because unfortunately teens are very competitive. So when you're in this sort of group program, you have to really be careful that you aren't pitting people against you or triggering, and parents need empowerment. So that's what we would, well, I can say as a clinician, I would get very overwhelmed sometimes when people would come and just got a diagnosis or a crisis, their child just is not eating or lost a lot of weight or whatever it might be, high symptoms. And you need an intensity. You need at that point an intensity. There needs to be education, there needs to be skills, there needs to be meal planning, there needs to be peer support from other parents, all coming in together. So that's a program that's 8 weeks of psycho ed. It's got the teenagers there once a week in a group together with parents, and things like, how are they seeing their parents, what's working, what's not, and as a group discussion with a clinician, going back to parents, what's working, and having comparisons, so that we are very goal focused on how to get to the next step. And we have groups available running at different times for ARFID. We recently had an ARFID teen group, which was very helpful, because these young people just, not my words, their words, they feel weird. They feel weird because they just can't eat. They're so picky, and it's not about body image or anything like that. It's a differential diagnosis if you've got body image. So they're just feeling, very isolated, as we've been talking about. So that's the group. And then obviously training and supervision for clinicians.
Well, thank you. My goodness, it's a lot more than just connecting the dots and eating. But Charlotte, now let's talk a little bit. Okay, where can All In Family fit in this circle?
Well, I think the beauty of what All In can offer is there's a whole bunch of us parents and family members out there, and all of us have our story of what worked well in our family and what we've tried, and we have 2 support groups that run online twice a week, Wednesday nights and Thursday nights, and people come together and they talk about the latest book they've read or the latest course they've taken, or what is working, and that alone is just such a great resource for families to tap into. After meeting you, Susan, Kirsten, of course, we were Googling you, and because this is like another resource, for our Ontario-based families who are struggling, and so that for us is really important. But the big thing is really working on our own mental health, or our toolbox of supports for ourselves, so that when we have those hard days, we can pull some resources for ourselves to get through them. Because, oh my gosh, back then I would have told you I'm fine, I got this. And those hard days, I really was struggling myself with my own anxiety, trying to support my daughter. And it wasn't until I started to take a better look, like I said before, myself, I was a better support for her. Susan, I love that part that you're meeting the people who come to your organization, meeting them where they're at. And I really appreciate that's what you were doing. And that's the thing that so many of these programs that people try to get their child into, or their partner, and then just to find out that it was the wrong fit. And we see this so often. And so another thing that we talk about is a plan B, so that if something isn't working for your child, what other options are out there, and those are really important. And so we try to weave this connection all across North America of the supports that are available out there. So if there isn't something in Manitoba and Ontario, where else? I work, I know Tracy, my day job is training peer support workers and my love of family peer support workers. And, there's a great organization, and I need to plug it a little bit. Eating Disorder Nova Scotia, they have a peer support line, that's across Canada. So if peer support is something that somebody wants to consider, there is those avenues, and there's access out there. And I'm really proud of all that they're doing out there. I got to spend time training up a whole bunch of family and parents to run workshops on how to support their child who has an eating disorder. And those are running across Canada in different provinces, not Manitoba. Still very upset that Manitoba didn't see the benefit in that. But, those are available. So there's little pockets of stuff out there. And if we can keep supporting that out and sharing, families have got a chance. They really do, finding what will work for them.
Well, we know that Charlotte and Kristen, they don't sleep. They work nonstop. No, just kidding on that one. But Kim, Waterstone, and for me, even learning more about the journey that you and your husband went through, and the foundation is wonderful. You have something that you're passionate about, and it's the access to care now for everybody going through this. What is the future for Waterstone? What are the next steps that you're going to be working towards?
Access to care, as I say, is the most important thing, because, as I said before, and we've talked, early intervention, early recognition, the better the outcomes. I wanted to go back to something that Susan was saying, and I look at, Susan, thank you for what you're doing. I think it's fabulous. I look at unfortunately, our hospital-based programs, they're overwhelmed with people on wait lists trying to access care, and they can't go anywhere. And so services like Susan that fits a population, which is fantastic. I look at what Waterstone is doing, and my goal is to be able to see it expanded, as I mentioned earlier, within all the universities and colleges, to have somebody there that somebody can access. I want it to be a sustainable program, and basically incorporated into the mental health and counseling centers. And that may mean the current mental health and counseling centers that are there, they may not be trained on eating disorders. Then maybe providing training so they then know how to identify and help somebody with an eating disorder. And a lot of times, if a student is more in a crisis situation, the schools then are working with the hospital-based programs to be able to, get a student into the program at a hospital. But no, I feel it's something that should be incorporated into all of our programs at the schools. Just like anxiety and depression, they have counselors. We need to have an eating disorder counselor.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kim. Susan, you wanted to add something.
I think that, first of all, love what Waterstone provided, but, no buts. So hard to meet the need.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I know that Waterstone, Kim, has been focusing on different criteria. We also need to be advocating to the government, because really, when you look at where the money goes, it goes to hospital-based programs, which have long wait lists, and I hate to say it, they also don't have so many beds. Like, even if they have beds, I can't tell you, they're not even full right now. So how are we spending all of the resources for really it's a mental illness with medical complications. So if you are medically stable or your eating's on track, you really don't get help. So, and that's a real problem. There should be more community funding. There should be more available to programs like All In. Like these should be accessible for everyone, because it's really, it's much more common. I'm not only talking about the diagnosed, but there's so many people struggling with it. We say, oh yeah, I've had a friend who said to me, doesn't everyone have an eating disorder? I'm like, no. But like, it feels very like, so everyone's on diets or saying things or, goes to binge eating disorder. Like, it's much more common than people are recognizing, even sometimes in themselves. And yet we're only treating severe medical complications for the most part. And that's a problem. We've got no step down programs, like not really, not anything really like they have in the States. They've got partial hospitalization, IOPs, residential, blah, 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 like at all levels of care. And yes, you do need to advocate for every single service that you get. I've been in rounds. I've had the privilege to be in rounds at Montenegro many years ago, which is in Los Angeles. And my goodness, they have to advocate to have someone there for one more day. Half of ward rounds was to the insurance, but at least they do have services across the board if someone has an eating disorder. We don't have anything's paid for, but like besides a very small group of people struggling.
Okay, so we need to get that petition signed. Well, I hear you, Susan. And you know what? We wanted, and we didn't even touch upon the rising number of males living with eating disorders. It's huge. And the BIPOC community and the 2S LGBTQ plus communities that all have their own special like needs too as well, on how to deal with eating disorders. And it's going to continue to grow. And organizations like all of these that we've heard about tonight, I mean, yes, you need to be at the front of the line and available, more so than ever. Kirsten, I guess, now listening to all this, and of course, yes, the family and you're all good, but when you look back at where you were with your husband and with your daughters to where you are now, what stands out most in your mind?
Well, just listening to the conversation, and great conversation tonight with all these ladies, I keep thinking about that early intervention, because you're told from day one, so here's what's going on with your family, here's what's going on with your daughter, and here's how important early intervention is. The sooner we get on top of this, the sooner it can be turned around, and it's crucial. But I have to be honest, the wait lists in Manitoba are, a year plus for services for eating disorders. And okay, you ladies might not believe this in Ontario, but in Manitoba, our inpatient adult eating disorder unit consists of 4 beds for our entire province. 4 beds in general psych. Yeah, so on your 18th birthday, and anyways, I will stop there, but just the access to services is so difficult. And for those families who can advocate and do have loud voices, sometimes they may be able to get bumped or shuffled along, but I mean, it's just overwhelming and so disappointing for so many families when you realize that you cannot access services. Yeah, something has to change there.
Wow. Oh, well, we're going to wrap things up with Gabby. Saving the best for last. Thank you all for joining. But Gabby, I think your story is so special in the fact that it resonates, right, with not only young females. It obviously now, like we just said, could be males, could be anybody from any gender, any age, any race, any ethnic background. But I guess, I hate to be cliche, maybe not words of wisdom, maybe that's the wrong terminology, but your own words on your personal experience, what gave you the strength to move on? I mean, Susan alluded that you went through a lot of different stepping stones along the way, but I'm sure there are some moments that gave you strength.
For sure. I think, well, just talking about what we've talked about, eating disorders go in hand with mental health. And so that also made the struggle really, really hard. And having depression makes you not feel like you're worthy of anything. And then having depression on top of an eating disorder, you just absolutely feel worthless and like you don't deserve anything. And so I think I was kind of in that mindset for so many years where I didn't feel like I was worthy of recovering. I didn't feel that I was worthy of happiness. Um, and so it took a lot of work on imagining what my life could be like, what my life could look like. Could I have a job? Could I have friends again? Could I have a family? Could I move forward, and what would I need to do to get there? Because that was something that I think for a long time I kind of had that disconnect. It was like I wanted those things, but I never actively did anything to get there. And so it wasn't until I started putting things into place and it was like I wanted those things so badly. They no longer were things that were like an ideal in my life, but things that could actually be in my life. That really helped. Like for example, work. For a long time, I didn't think that I deserved to get a job, and once I kind of regained that, it was like, what can I do to not lose that again? Because it was things like work, dance that I had lost in my life, and essentially also made me unhappy too because I lost them. So having those things back in my life just kind of reminded me of why I needed to do it. And as I gained more things back in my life, it was kind of that realization clicked, and it was like, this is how I want to live my life.
Oh. Well, we thank you, Gabby, for sharing that. Definitely that puts it all in a nutshell on what we were trying to, I guess, emphasize, talk about, get the information out, dispel some myths. Thank you, Kim from Waterstone Foundation. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Gabby, of course, again. Thank you, Charlotte. Enjoy the sun in Nuevo Vallarta. And definitely thank you so much, Kirsten, for being here. And I know you can tell the story over and over again, but it never gets tired. You always show the passion, but also the journey, right, that got you where you are today. And like Gabby said, one piece at a time, gaining it back. And now you have a beautiful life. And same with Gabby. So thank you all for joining. And for more information,
I was going to say thank
Yes.
you for having us and putting this platform forth, Tracy. This is so important.
you know what? If we can get one call to All In, or one call to Waterstone, or to Connected Eating, or one follower on Gabby's Instagram, then Hue has done their work. But you can go to these websites, folks. You can go to waterstonefoundation.ca, connectedeating.com. You can go to @dailywellnesswithgabby on Instagram, and you can also go to allinfamily.ca for any information and maybe some help. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Hue at Home.